Okay, if everyone's ready to start our service tonight, we'll get it started. And let's make it a time of prayer tonight. Got Beverly Pretty that's in rehab, and so we need to continue to remember her tonight. And also LeVon lost his sister, and they put her away today at Bethel Cemetery. And so, you know, we've got Sharon Motley that's up in Rochester, Minnesota now at the Mayo Clinic, and they're going to see her tomorrow, and then Friday she's looking to get a result, you know, have to do a heart ablation and try to get some things done, you know, with her. And seems like she's had more trouble with that than what I thought she would in the outstart. She was excited about, you know, maybe getting some peace with it, but it's been a little bit testy with her. So let's remember her tonight. And she said it was tough trying to get up there with all the snow and everything, and it's going to be even worse, look like, trying to come back. And so remember those people, and Doris and Raymond, they need our prayers tonight. And the list goes on. And so we've got Alma over here that's got a bruised hand, and she's had to go through quite a bit, you know, and a lot of pain with that hand. And Dorothy, she's had a procedure done.
Some tests.
Huh?
Just some tests. I'm on 17 days.
There you go. So yeah, we've got several that's you know, seen some doctors this week, and I'd like to go 1 week without anybody in here seeing a doctor. You know, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? But it seems like we patronize those doctor's offices pretty regular, don't we? And I'm sure there's other of you that have prayer requests tonight. So let's Jackie stands in need of our prayers tonight as well. So
Wilma
remember
needs prayers. Wilma.
Wilma, okay, remember her. Ronald Foster, he stands in need of our prayers. Okay.
Mary.
Yes, remember Glenda tonight with that problem.
And Mary.
Mary, yes, and
I just wanted to let you know about Brenda and Vicky, they stand in need of constant prayer. But I wanted to share a blessing. Teresa, my older daughter, she's in Haiti on a mission trip.
yeah.
She's been there 3 or 4 days. I got one text from her, said, I've been here all day. That's it.
Wow. Well, that's good. Brian and Doyle Williamson, they made it back from the Philippines, and so anyway, they had I guess a little over a week over there to preach to those people. And so remember that ministry as we hope it goes on over there. Okay, Brother Chuck needs our prayers tonight. And there you go. All right. Anyone else? Yes, Terry.
Miss Olita and
Olita, yes. Olita Ammons. And who? Adrian and Ruth. Yeah.
I spoke to Alita's daughter yesterday. She said she's getting pretty good.
Yeah, that's what she told me. And for getting her medicine and stuff, you know. So, yeah. All right. If there's nothing further, well, let's have prayer tonight. And, Brother Jim, would you word us some prayer?
Heavenly Father, I thank you for this day. Thank heaven, oh, thank you for everything you give us, we thank you. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Do you have any choir members that'd like to come up tonight for a few songs? Alma's not up to playing for us, and so we're gonna go ahead and do a little acapella up here. Try to do the best we can. Yeah, Terry's up there. Come on, Terry. Terry's not playing the piano. I don't know why I always just key off the piano. We need the guitars too, that's for sure. Yeah. Number 29 is A flat, according to what Alan's got wrote down here.
I'm gonna make you a chart that'll tell you that you can lower that down to G or something like that, it might be a little bit easier on you. Since I watched the podcast here, I can tell some of the songs are kind of straining up. So I'm gonna fix you a little chart.
Well,
What is it?
yeah,
Way back to you.
let's see what A flat sounds like, I guess. As I journey through the land, singing as I go, pointing souls to Calvary, to the crimson flow. Many arrows pierce my soul from without within, but my Lord leads me on, through Him I must win. Oh, I want to see Him, look upon His face, there to sing forever of His saving grace. On the streets of glory, let me lift my voice. Cares all past, home at last, ever to rejoice. When in service for my Lord, dark may be the night, but I'll cling more close to Him, He will give me light. Satan's snares may vex my soul, turn my thoughts aside, but my Lord goes ahead, leads whate'er betide. Oh, I want to see Him, look upon His face, there to sing forever of His saving grace. On the streets of glory, let me lift my voice. Cares all past, home at last, ever to rejoice. When in valleys low I look toward the mountain high, and behold my Savior there, leading in the fight. With a tender hand outstretched toward the valley low, guiding me I can see as I onward go. Oh, I want to see Him, look upon His face, there to sing forever of His saving grace. On the streets of glory, let me lift my voice. Cares all past, home at last, ever to rejoice. When before me billows rise from the mighty deep, then my Lord directs my bark, He does safely keep, and He leads me gently on through this world below. He's a real friend to me, oh, I love Him so. Oh, I want to see Him, look upon His face, there to sing forever of His saving grace. On the streets of glory, let me lift my voice. Cares all past, home at last, ever to rejoice. Amen.
One
Number,
thirty-eight.
which one?
138.
138. Nothing but the blood. That's in G. What can wash away my sins? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. What can make nothing but the blood of Jesus. For my cleansing this my plea, nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other fount I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus. Nothing can for sin atone, nothing but the blood of Jesus. Naught of good that I have done, nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other fount I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus. This is all my hope and peace, nothing but the blood of Jesus. This is all my righteousness, nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other fount I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus. Amen. All right. Anyone else have a selection?
Not me.
221.
221, you say, Doug?
Yep.
All right. Oh, how I love Jesus. A flat. There is a name I love to hear. I love to sing its word. It sounds like music in my ear, the sweetest name of earth. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus, because He first loved me. It tells me of a Savior's love who died to set me free. It tells me of His precious blood, the sinner's perfect plea. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus, because He first loved me. It tells me what my Father hath in store for every day. And though I tread a darksome path, He'll sunshine all the way. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus, because He first loved me. It tells of one whose love know, it seems to me like it should be human nature for someone to love if they receive love. Someone to be able to return that love, you know. But it seems like the devil has his hand on many. You know, there's a lot of hatred going on in this world we're in, and people, you know, people over there in Syria, American people lost their lives, you know, just today. And it was reported. And, you know, you watch the news, and it just seems to me like there's a whole lot of unrest, a whole lot of trouble going on, people losing their lives every day. You know, just a lot of horrible things taking place. And God's gonna wrap it all up one of these days.
Yep.
And he's gonna come back for his children, you know, and I want to be ready. I know we make mistakes along the way, but God gives us that opportunity to come clean before Him, and we need to be letting everybody know that all it takes is just believing in your heart and confessing with your mouth. You gotta believe that.
Yeah.
You gotta believe that Jesus is Lord, and you should be saved. That avoids everything else, you know, that the devil can do. He can do a lot, but he can't take that away from you. And so we need to just love the Lord because he first loved us. Amen. Brother Ray.
A rough and rocky road leads to the mountain. Sometimes it's hard to go any farther on my way, but I have learned a secret while traveling through this valley. I can hear from heaven when I start to pray. I can see heaven, I can see home, I can see clear crystal rivers flowing from the throne. I can hear the angels harmony. I can see heaven waiting for me. Imagine if you can a city of perfection. You may not have plans, oh, but there is so much more. The day I came to meet him, that's when they began construction on that brand new mansion with my name on the door. I can see heaven, I can see home, I can see clear crystal rivers flowing from the throne. I can hear the angels harmony. I can see heaven waiting for me. I can see heaven can hear the angels harmony. I can see heaven waiting for me.
I'm probably not ready with this one, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Hey. This is an old Buck Owens thing he wrote. When the road is rocking and heavy is your load, when the sky is cloudy and the sunshine is gone, when your life is troubled and nothing's going right, bring it to Jesus, He'll show you the light. Well, bring it to Jesus, He'll show you the way. Bring it to Jesus, He'll brighten your day. When your life is troubled and you can't sleep at night, bring it to Jesus, He'll show you the light. Well, Jesus is the Savior, the light of the world, the only way to heaven, so we read in His Word. Tell Him all your troubles and let Him make it right. Bring it to Jesus, He'll show you the light. Well, bring it to Jesus, He'll show you the way. Bring it to Jesus, He'll brighten your day. When your life is troubled and you can't sleep at night, bring it to Jesus, He'll show you the light. Well, bring it to Jesus, He'll show you the way. Bring it to Jesus, He'll brighten your day. When your life is troubled and you can't sleep at night, bring it to Jesus, He'll show you the light.
I kept seeing this up here, and I should have known before I got up there. I kept thinking, well, what is that doing up there? I thought maybe Rise and Shine had been snuck in and maybe did some practicing or something. We're going to be in Revelation 21 and part of 22. You notice I got more verses down here than I usually do. Been talking about heaven and had several songs about heaven tonight and everything, you know. And you think about it, I think this is like the 7th lesson that we've had on heaven in these verses. And just going to continue to describe this city, because you think about it, it's our eternal dwelling place. I put 3 scriptures up there on top on Hebrews, you know. I think a couple of them we've used before, but basically telling you about that city that Moses was looking for. Abraham. But anyway, in verse 9, we start off and it says, "And there came unto me one of the 7 angels, which had the 7 vials full of the 7 last plagues, and talked with me, saying, Come hither, I will show thee the bride, the Lamb's wife. And he carried me away in the spirit to a great high mountain, and showed me that great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God, having the glory of God, and her light was like unto a stone most precious, even like a jasper stone, clear as crystal. And had a wall great and high, and had 12 gates, and at the 12 gates and at the gates 12 angels, and names written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. On the east 3 gates, on the north 3 gates, on the south 3 gates, and on the west 3 gates. And the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and in them the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. And he that talked with me had a golden reed to measure the city, and the gates thereof, and the wall thereof. And the city lieth 4 square. The length is as large as the breadth. And he measured the city with the reed, 12,000 furlongs. The length and the breadth and the height of it are equal. And he measured the wall thereof, 144 cubits, according to the measure of a man, that is, of the angel. And the building of the wall of it was jasper, and the city was pure gold, like unto clear glass. When you look at this, we'll get into these foundations here in a minute, but you look at this description, you know, John is trying to draw us a picture in words in a way that we can come as close to understanding what he's seeing with his eyes. And as he's looking upon this deal, he says, you know, this angel came to me, and you notice he says he's one of the 7 angels that had the 7 vials. So, you know, when you think about it in heaven, a lot of people say, are we going to be able to recognize each other? And I don't think there's any doubt that we will. It says we'll be known as we are known. But you notice, John doesn't have any trouble recognizing this angel. This angel was one of the 7, and he picked him out. And he said, you know, I recognized him right away. I didn't have to have anybody explain to me who he was. And this time, you notice, before, a couple of times with an angel, when they'd come before him, he would bow down before him. This time, he recognizes this angel. This angel says, I want to show you this city. And takes him to this great high mountain in a place where he can observe this city. Now, last week I said, you know, that I see it, and this is my opinion, because I've talked to some people this last week, and some of them have varying opinions, but I see this city coming down out of heaven and attaching itself on earth. Now, there are a lot of people who will say, well, it will hover over it. And I think it will during the millennial deal, before the old heaven and the old earth are uncreated. And in its purity, now this is able to rest on the new earth. But if somebody says that it's up there and it's floating, you know, I can't say. It's just, you know, my opinion and how I feel about it. But he says, I want to show you the bride, the Lamb's wife. And he said that it had the glory of God. Her light was like a stone most precious. You know, we talked about how the stone, we talked about the jasper. It's an alliteration from the Greek word and from the Hebrew word, which are really close to each other. It's yaspah, and it just means jasper. And what it is, most clearly to us, is a diamond. And so this is going to be a massive, massive diamond. And what is a diamond known for is its clearness and its refraction. He says, you know, he saw the light, and the light is, you know, was like a stone most precious. When you think about it, God and Jesus are going to be the light. We'll find that out here in a little bit. And with them inside and everywhere they go, you know, with that light coming through, all these different colors, all these different foundations and these different stones we're going to talk about, and all the different colors in these, as the light of God and as the light of the Lamb goes through this, it just is a beautiful, I can't imagine how John must have felt to see that and to look upon it. You know, after being in a rock on a nasty island that was there for punishment, just as plain and, you know, no frills, and then he sees a sight like this, you know, what an encouragement to his heart. But he says, and it had a wall great and high, 12 gates, and at the 12 gates 12 angels. The names written thereon are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. So he sees this deal, he's going to tell us it's 4 squares, 1,400 or 1,500 miles high, 1,500 miles long, 1,500 miles wide. it's a huge, huge deal. I think they said it's 20-some thousand times larger than the city of London. And it's just massive in its deal, but notice the symmetry. Now he says it's got 12 gates, and on each side, it's just like God can make something with a symmetry. He says it's got a high wall. Now last week we said something about some people believe that this is could be a pyramid. I don't think it is, because, you know, every time you see pyramids referred to, or high places, it always refers to them as in Satan worship or in worship of other gods and other things. And he says, you know, beware not to worship in high places. The ziggurat, the Tower of Babel, all of these were pyramid type shape. The pyramids in Egypt, all these were for the sun gods, for Ra and all these other false gods. But he says that it has these 12 gates, and you notice at each gate there's an angel. You ever wonder why that angel's there? Not for protection. You know, I think we're going to go through there, we'll go through that gate, say, hi, how you doing? Probably, hey, Gabriel, or what, it won't be Gabriel, but it'll be somebody, you know, an angel that we'll know. And there to greet us and there to everything. We can just say, you know, where you going? Well, I'm headed off, you're gone, you know, whatever. But can you imagine these huge, huge gates, that height, that big, 3 of them? And it says on each one of them the name of one of the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, for all these people that say that Israel was set aside, that Israel was replaced by the church, how in the world do you get that? When he talks earlier, you know, in there about the 144,000 witnesses, and how that they were all Jewish, they were all from certain tribes. And now, for eternity, the names of the tribes of Israel are going to be inscribed on those gates that you and I are going to go in and out of. We can't miss it. In a little bit, we're going to see a word that's going to be referred to, you know, where the kings and the people of the earth, and it's going to, an interesting deal there. But and it says there's 3 gates on each side facing north, south, east, and west. It says it has a great wall. We're going to talk about this wall here in a little bit, because it's kind of interesting, the dimensions. And it says the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and in them the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. So eternity, you're going to have these 12 gates and the names of Israel stamped there. So God is showing, you know, his everlasting eternal covenant with Israel. He's also showing his eternal everlasting covenant with the church. All the promises that were made to Israel, all the promises that were made to the church. Every time we see those names, every time we see those foundations and those gates, we'll know that God, for eternity, made those promises and has kept every one of them. And he says, the 12 apostles of the Lamb. And he that talked with me had a golden rod to measure the city and the gate thereof, and the wall thereof. So we've seen this before. This is in Revelation chapter 11, remember? Kind of the same thing. He said he went and he measured the temple at that time. And that time he was talking about the temple during the tribulation. That's the tribulation. Also, we've seen this same thing, very similar, in Ezekiel. In Ezekiel chapter 40 through 48, God gives Ezekiel a vision of the temple during the millennial kingdom. Now, the one we're talking about in chapter 11, during the 7 years of tribulation. The one Ezekiel's talking about is during the 1,000 years after the tribulation. The millennial kingdom, he says, you know, this is what this is going to look like. And he tells the angel at that time to measure that one in chapter 48 of Ezekiel. So sometime when you get a little extra time, I'm going to try to cover a lot of verses tonight, so I'm not going to get as specific about some of this stuff, but go look it up and read it, and it's really interesting. Why does God choose to measure these areas? You know, he's measuring off the temple in the tribulation, the one in the millennial kingdom, and now this city and this wall and all these things. God, every time God takes ownership or God says, this is mine, he measures it. It's the same thing here. He says, this is my city. This is my dwelling place. Remember when Jesus said, I go to my Father's house? That's his house. And he says, and the city lieth foursquare, and it talks about, the length and everything, and then he says, and he measured the wall thereof 144 cubits. It's kind of interesting when you think about it. Why would you have a 1,400 mile high or 1,500 mile high city and have a wall that was only 72 yards high? A cubit basically is from your elbow to the tip of your finger. And so when he measures that, it comes out to 216 feet. And I think more than likely the wall is going to be as high as the city, but the width of it is going to be probably 72 feet. You say prove it? I can't. I think that just makes sense though when you think about it. In the way he has all of this set up, you wouldn't have a city that would be, miles and miles high, and then just have hundreds of miles high and then have a 72-foot wall. Doesn't make any sense. So I think more than likely when he says it, he measured it with that rod, it was 72 feet, 216 feet, 72 yards. And he says, now he begins to give us a description of how this is made up. And he says, he gives us the measurements, the layout of this whole beautiful city. And he says the wall of it is jasper, like a big, huge diamond, and the city pure gold, like unto clear glass. And I kind of have a problem with this when you think about it. When you look at a diamond, we can feature this huge, huge diamond up in the sky, and we can feature, it being to where you can see through it, for it being clear. But gold is opaque, very opaque. When you look at gold, it isn't something that you can see through. So what is this? This is the kind of gold you and I have never seen, because it says it's clear as glass. So it's a translucent kind of gold. Now, you can take all the impurities out of gold and it's still going to be opaque. It's not going to be clear like some of these other things, You can take and you can clear it off until it gets to, the highest purity, and you can look in there and you can see your reflection. You can do the same thing with silver. But it doesn't matter how much you take out, you can't see through it. You might see a reflection back. So this is something that we had never seen before, and John identifies it. He says it's clear as glass. In verse 19 he says, the foundations of the wall of the city were garnished with all manners of precious stones. Now he's going to list 12 of these different stones. Remember he said there was 12 foundations and these 12 stones. Where have we seen these stones before? There's the same list in the breastplate of the high priest. When he was given that breastplate, it had 12 stones on it. And a lot of times when he would go in, he would intercede or would ask something. Some of those stones might light up or something would happen so that he'd know what tribe it was talking about, or, what certain things meant. And in that breastplate, you'll see all of these stones. Now remember, the city's clear as glass, these foundations. And with the light coming through, can you imagine, because like he says, it's the first foundation was jasper, so it's like a diamond, it's clear. The second like a sapphire, the third chalcedony, an emerald, sardonyx, sardius, the seventh chrysolite, beryl, topaz, Christophorus, jaspineth, and amethyst. All of these, when you think about it, other than like the jasper is a clear, the other ones you can see basically 2 or 3 different shades of green. This sardonyx deal we're talking about is a red with white. The sardonyx is a crimson red stone. The emerald, of course, you see the greens and you see the different hues of greens. And the topaz, and some of these are blue, and then you have some that are kind of aqua color, and all these different colors that, as this light comes through there, refract off of these different foundations, sending out through all the new heavens and up on the new earth these different colors. And can you imagine the beauty of that? And think about it. Don't know this for sure, but I don't think there'll be any shadows in here. Because, you know, like right now, when you go out and you're walking, if the sun's up here, you'll have a shadow over there. But if God is the light and it surrounds all of eternity and everything, there won't be any shadow. So as this light comes through there, it's pure and it's everywhere. And it's going to be a magnificent sight to see. In verse 21, he says, the 12 gates were 12 pearls. Wow. Can you imagine a 1,500-mile long pearl? Can you imagine the oyster that came out? You know, this isn't going to be made by an oyster, it's going to be made by God. But you think about what that means. What does an oyster represent? An oyster represents suffering. And every time we look at these gates, we'll think about the suffering of Christ and the suffering of earth, because, you know, why does it represent suffering? All these other stones and all this other stuff are either metals or they're stones or quartz or crystal or something like that. But this, the pearl, comes from an irritant, and it's the reaction of that organism to that irritant. And it puts this coating over it, puts another coating over it, and keeps putting this coating over it until it covers it, and they're beautiful. You know, you've seen pearls, and you hold one up to the light, and if it's a good quality, those things are just magnificent. To think that that started because of a piece of sand or something got into the inside of that soft tissue, and that pearl reacted to that and covered it and covered it. It just tells us of God's grace, how he covers us again and again with his mercy and his love, how he covers us and protects us, and how all these things that would cause us harm or whatever, he has layer and layer of everything between us and that, and we have to worry no more about the pain that would be caused by something like that, the sickness, the sorrow, you know, none of this stuff. He says all of those things are going to be death, all of that stuff is going to be gone. And the symbolism of that pearl on that gate, you know, you can't help but look at a pearl and just think about suffering. And when I do think about that, I think of our Lord and Savior. And he says, the street of the city was pure gold, as it were, transparent glass. Again, he mentions this deal, you know, and he says, no, this time he says the street. He doesn't say the streets. But apparently all the streets are going to be pure gold, and it's going to be transparent glass. And how he knows that's gold, well, that's one of the questions I like. Of course, when we get there and we see it, we'll say, oh yeah, now I know what he's talking about. I can see it myself, you know, with these new eyes. Well, I won't need these. But, you know, when we look at it, we'll understand and we'll know what he's talking about. But as much as John can, he's trying to tell us about this place that we're going to be in for eternity. And he says, and I saw no temple therein, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are the temple of it. And the city had no need of sun, neither of moon, to shine in it, for the glory of God did lighten it, and the Lamb is the light thereof. You think of that, there's no need to have a temple because we won't have any need to offer any sacrifices. You know, we'll be praising God, we'll be giving glory to God, we'll be honoring God. He'll have things for us to do just like he does for these angels. A lot of people say, well, you know, it's going to be so boring in heaven. A lot of people say, I don't really know that I want to go to heaven because it's going to be boring there. How can you say that when you see a God that has the imagination to create something so beautiful and create a universe so wonderful to create absolute perfection. You don't think He's gonna have some wonderful things for us to do and to enjoy? Just to see Him is gonna be magnificent enough. In our glorified bodies and in pure as we'll ever be, we'll never know the infinity of God completely. I don't think God will ever let us understand and know the infinity of God, but we'll know God face to face, and we'll know the Lamb face to face. There's no need to have a place, a temple, to worship Him, because they'll be there for us to worship Him. Did you notice before in Revelation we talked at one point, and they looked and John saw his temple, and he saw the altar, and before the altar he saw an ark, which would be kind of like the Ark of the Covenant. You notice in here, this is different. Jesus said, I go to prepare a place for you, where, you know, and in this preparation, when we come into eternity, we'll have no need anymore. Before, what were we having to go to those altars for? To beg for mercy for those that were still on earth. Even during the millennial kingdom, when those who are still in their fleshly bodies and those in sin, but in eternity we'll have no need of that. We won't have any need to even bring forth prayers for anybody, because everybody's going to be perfect and wonderful. There'll be no sin. There'll be none of these things that we have to pray for now. We'll have unabated worship. We'll have perfect worship before Him. And we'll have things to do. He'll keep us busy. He'll have things that I'm sure that we'll be involved in. But a lot of people, amazes me. I've heard people say that, and I just think, you know, I just want to kick you for saying something like that. God gives you this wonderful, beautiful gift, and you're going to tell me that you think you're going to be bored? You know, have you ever been bored as a Christian when you're growing in Christ? You know, and we haven't even seen Him yet. How can, you know, just think of the excitement when you're learning new things and God is revealing Himself to you. But when we see Him face to face, how exciting is that going to be? It just sends thrills and chills up and down. I told you, I think probably if I'd have been born 200 years earlier, I'd have been a Quaker or a Shaker or one of those, because it just gives me chills. But He says, you know, they'll have no need of the sun, neither the moon, to shine in it, for the glory of God will lighten it, and the Lamb is the light thereof. There's no night. You know, you think about these big, huge gates, and they're always open. There's no need to close these gates, because why do you usually have gates? It's to keep people out. You know, I'm all for Trump and his wall. I wish we'd build that thing all the way across there and build another one all the way back, and, you know, as high as we could get it. But, you know, in this place, we're not trying to keep anybody out. Everybody has admittance in and out as they want to come and go. That's up to them. But in this thing, they're saying, you know, there's no need, because there's no night, nothing to be hidden. Everything can be seen. Everything will be pure and wonderful and glorious. And He says, now watch this. This is an interesting statement. We'll have to hurry to get this in there, but it says, and the nations of them which are saved shall walk in the light of it, and the kings of the earth do bring their glory and honor into it. And where do we get nations and kings and their honor and glory? Where does that come from? Well, in the Greek, this word for nations is actually the word that's ethos, which means like peoples. It's not, and most of the time in the New Testament, it's translated by the King James as Gentiles. But it says, you know, that the nations of them which are saved shall walk in the light of it. So it says all those that are in that nation. Now, what did He talk about? Those 12 gates that all had the name of Israel on them. What does He say here? He says even there's going to be Gentiles in that city. There's not going to be nations at that time. We'll not have nations. We'll not have kingdoms. We'll not have that. There's no need for it, because God is the King. He is, you know, Jesus is on His throne, and we don't have any need for any other kings. He is Lord of Lords. He is overall. So what does it mean in this next one? Really interesting deal when you look at it, where it says, the kings of the earth do bring their glory and honor into it. In other words, there's not going to be any distinction in heaven among God's people. There's not going to be those who are over others. He says, when the kings come into this city, all of their glory is going to be given to God, and they'll have no glory. They're going to be just like the rest of us. The very lowest man, when he comes in there, he's not going to have any shame. There's not going to be one of us that's going to be considered over another. There's not going to be any of us that are going to be considered to be superior to another. God says, you know, all these, you may have been a king on earth, and when they look at him, they'll say, everything that I ever had was nothing compared to you, and all of their glory will fade. And if we come before God, you know, whatever we think we're so good at or proud about, or any of these people on earth, there's not going to be that. Everybody will be loved and treated equally. Not by race, not by how rich you are, not by what kind of background you come from, whether you're of what called royal blood, we'll all be royal blood. It says, because all those that believe in him, you know, it says, those that are saved shall walk. All of us are going to be saved. Don't you like that verse? I kind of like that myself. And it says, the gates of it shall not be shut at all by day, for there shall be no night there, and they shall bring the glory and the honor of the nations into it. And there shall in no wise enter into it anything that defileth, neither whatsoever worketh abomination, and maketh a lie, but they which are written in the Lamb's book of life. Amen. Hallelujah. Praise God. Those of us whose names are written in there, you know, when you think about it, he keeps mentioning day and night, day and night. What is that a symbol of? It says the morning and the evening and what? The first day. There won't be any recognition of time. Time will be done away with. You know, when you think about it, in Genesis 1:1 it says, in the beginning God created. What did he create? Because it's a different beginning than in John chapter 1, verse 1, where it said, in the beginning God. Two different beginnings. Go study those. That's an interesting study. But in the beginning, when God created the heaven and the earth, and then he says, you know, the evening and the morning and the first day, and then he says that, you know, throughout the whole week. What is that as an indication of? That there was night, and then there was day, and that first day, and all those things that God created in a certain time span. There will be no time span. We won't have watches. None of us will have any need for watches or to look at our cell phone. Now you don't have to have a watch because you have a cell phone. You can say, hey Siri, what time it is? You know, and she'll tell you. And you can even ask her in Spanish and she'll tell you. So, you know, it's just a wonderful thing. You won't need it. You won't have to say, hey, what time is it? I'm late for lunch. Who cares? You know, if you want to eat, you can eat. You know, and that's in this last chapter, and I'm going to wrap it up there, but when you think about this place we're going to, never think of it as boring or disinteresting. Never think of it as some place that you won't be accepted, or some place you have to worry about where if you come in and you're not dressed like everybody else, or your hair's not just right, or you don't have this or that, or not whatever it is, you know, you'll still be loved. And all of us will have hair, and all of us will, you know, be able to see real good and all that stuff. But anyway, just think about where we're going to be, and as John tries to explain this to us, this is the 8th lesson we've had on heaven. And just, I mean, it's just magnificent. The more you look at it, and I've read some of these other books that go along with this, and I can't get all of that in here in this short period of time, but it is just, it's even beyond description. And God gives us through John a small glimpse of what heaven's going to be like. and I can't wait to get there.
Amen.
All right. Anyone have any announcements tonight? Okay, let's be praying for our services Sunday morning. And remember the 17th of February, Sunday evening, is going to be a singing here again with Pacey and Sunshine Band. And, so, you know, they was down at Brentwood a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know if they're gonna be there the 19th in the next few days or not, but, that Brentwood singing down there, it's fun to go to. They got a lot of good music, got some gospel involved in it. And so, I may have started something that'd be hard for me to back out of now. But, anyway, they're gonna be here on the 17th,